Alright folks, welcome to this exciting video where you once again join me in the beautiful landscape of Scotland. Today we've come to Glen Prosen, and this is actually the parking access to the glen. And I was here one time months ago with Highlander and we went round one side of this glen, but today I'm hoping to punch on down a road that I've never been on before and just see if there's any cool history or wee nuggets that's worth recording for a fun wee adventure. The lands of Glen Prosen here are absolutely beautiful, and at this time of year it's kind of the tail end of summer, just the start of autumn, and the trees are starting to change colour. And then this little river here flows through this picture postcard scene of Scotland. Anyway, I'll update you. This is as far basically as you can go with the car, but the road does punch on a wee bit further before we get to the track that I need to get to, so I'll update you once I'm further up here. As I pass by these lands here, I'm noticing this sign. It says, "Welcome to the Bothy Distillery, award-winning producers of whiskey, gin and rum." And it says, "Open by appointment." So that's another thing that's going on in this glen. I'm pretty sure this track here leads its way through the lands and then heads out onto the hill. So shout out to whoever owns and operates this distillery up here. I've always said that's the way to do it. If you're Scottish, the ultimate business that you can own is a distillery, and they're doing it all here in this glen with the whiskey, which is cool, and then obviously the gin and the rum as well, and that's amazing. I love to see these industries popping up. Whiskey's an incredible industry to get into. Liquid gold it is, folks. So there we go, folks. I've just come through that gate and I've just come through the hustle and bustle of the lower glen. There's obviously that distillery there, and then there's a few residences, but it's amazing once you come out onto the hill here. It's almost going out into just like such a vast barren landscape, and the view just gets absolutely incredible. Once we go around this corner, it's just the most incredible valley leading on in the distance, and that's the valley today I'm hoping to explore and have a wee walk up and see what's up here. I love getting out and about at the weekends and just punching into destinations like this. It's a different scene, like every week on the channel, different rolling hills and different history to be found within them. Up in the sky here, circling above this beautiful glen, we've actually got a massive bird of prey, and it's a red kite. And I just love seeing it, not only the history in these lands, but also the wildlife and nature. Once you get out into peace and tranquility, the world's just so alive with so much going on. Incredible creatures and incredible landscapes that they fly through or run through even. It depends what it is that you see. There's just so much. And look at this ancient wall line. There's a dry stone dike leads its way up, and then there's kind of like a bit of a little wall enclosure there. Over the years, obviously, these lands have been used for agriculture, and they've been changed and developed from ancient times until now. And even at this site, you can actually see the stone wall continuing around like a circuit, and already that's like remains of wee farm crofts and things that are no longer operational. Obviously the land is still used by the local, most likely shepherds and gamekeepers and people like that. So here's our first sign of livestock in the glen here, folks. We've got the local sheep here chilling. It does have fences around it, whereas some of the other glens I go to, the sheep just kind of roam onto the road and stuff like that. But each Scottish glen is managed differently, or they've got different ways of doing things often. Some of them do have individual fields with fences, and other ones, the shepherds kind of allow their sheep to roam free. Yeah, look at this, the view's starting to open up here. There's an incredible farmhouse kind of sits in the middle of that massive glen. And I'm hoping the track kind of goes on past that up into the higher lands of this glen. Pretty much I'm wanting to walk right up to where we see those big hills in the far distance. So that's kind of my goal, as long as there's like a decent track. Another thing with these Scottish hills, they can often look easy to walk on from a distance, or it often looks like it's not that far of a distance, but once you start walking on them, it's a horrific surface to walk on. Pure boglands, deep heather, holes that you could proper disappear into. but then also the distance and the vastness of these hills is another incredible thing. That's how you can actually see like a haze in front of the furthest hills from here. So this here, folks, I would have to say looks like my dream house. Imagine having a beautiful house like that. It's quite a decent size. It's got some little sheds out the back. It's got a wee forest next to it, and then it's set within a landscape like this. Nothing but peace and tranquility. I just love it. It's such a scene of Scotland, a house like that, in such a wild, remote land. So I'm just hoping this footpath continues on past this house, or else I'll just be awkwardly standing at somebody's front door. But I'm pretty sure that I can see the path leading on. I'm wondering if it does a circuit. I'm hoping to punch over this hill in front of me and get a view into the far glen that I've never seen. And then I'm wanting to hopefully maybe link up with another path and do a circuit right around the hill here, which could be fun. I love the way the river meanders its way down through these lands. Everything's just got so much character, and I love seeing the old dry stone dike lines as well, cutting their way through such a harsh environment. Maybe at one time this land was more drained and maintained before all this bogland kind of reappeared. Kind of often it's once places are more like abandoned. A lot of these places were used for gamekeeping and stuff rather than agriculture in the most recent years. But yeah, what a beautiful house up here. It's just such a paradise scene of Scotland. It's a beautiful place to pass by on my adventure. It's like a postcard of Scotland. Check it out, folks. These massive boulders that we see lying in random areas in the lands, these are actually left behind from the end of the glaciation period. At one time, there was ice flowing all the way over here basically with glaciers, and they would take the rocks off the top of the high hills as they carved and smoothed them, and then the rocks would be within the ice floating down the glen, and then when the ice melted, the rocks were just left sitting wherever they had been when the ice melted basically. And who even knows like how quick the ice melted or any of that sort of stuff, but that's why we see random rocks like that. It's not actually bedrock. So that house there would have most likely been a little farm croft, and then over the years it was adapted and changed and then brought up to the modern standards, and that's how we see like the bigger house. But probably at one time it would have been a little croft cottage that was standing on the land there, maintaining and looking after a little piece of land, and probably like a few animals within it. And look at this, the cool thing is my track does punch on further up here. This is what I enjoy. Whenever I'm in somewhere that I've never been, it's just so much fun because you never know like what's round the corner. Whenever I'm on adventures as well into lands that I've never been, I often look at the hills and I try and figure out whether there's been an ancient hill fort or whatever in the lands. But today I've not seen anything that looks like that. It's hard in Scotland because natural hills can be any shape. It's just like infinite. So I often look for hills that's been levelled off or that have like a big ditch around them. And there has been a couple of times over the years we've found like undocumented hill forts and things in the land. Yes, look at this, we're now out of this section, folks, and we're into this next wild hill section. Mission update, folks. I've noticed on this wild bit of hill that I'm now on, there's actually cows grazing. There's a herd of cows kicking about up there. I can see a track leading up that way, but I'm not sure if this track keeps going straight ahead. I'm hoping to probably just go straight ahead if I can, so I'm wanting to go as far into these far hills as I can get. I should have maybe had the mountain bike for this one today, but you never know what you're going to get into, and sometimes if you're on a mountain bike you don't actually have the same right to roam as you do if you're on foot, especially if there's livestock and stuff grazing land. You don't want to be fleeing about on a mountain bike and stuff through them. So I've come over the top of this hill, folks, and away in the far distance I can actually see a cottage in the front of these massive hills that I was trying to get to today, and the track continues, which is epic. But the interesting thing, I'm going to have to navigate my way past these cows, folks. They're not on the track, so hopefully I can just walk on past without them getting too agitated or upset, because obviously I'm hoping they don't come over to me. One of them's got a bell on its neck, and I think that's because they roam such wild lands. Yeah, when the cows have got cafes, you really have to be careful because they can become really territorial and defensive. And I don't trust cows the way that I trust sheep, because you can tell, like, sheep and stuff what they're going to do, and most of the time it would be like run away. Look at this little bridge and the wee stream. Yeah, I always think if I did get chased by like the whole herd, I need a getaway strategy, and my strategy would be literally to probably try and cross the river and stuff like that, because they would have a hard time getting grip. But a cow's a scary animal if it's chasing you, because they're big and they're heavy and they're actually fast for the size of them. So that's why this part of the video we're keeping it rolling, folks. Look at the closest cows to us are these little cafes. Hello there. Look at it, the little white cafe here nearest us. It's coming over to say hello. I'm hoping it doesn't. I want it just to stay where it is. Yes, I'm so happy here. See, with cows as well, it's not often until you turn your back on them that they'll start following you when they think that you're not looking at them. That's why sometimes I need to keep an eye on them. See how you get eye contact with certain animals? With a cow, I think the eye contact goes a long way. But they'll see that I'm no threat. I'm just hoping that once I've been down this path, I can get back up here again without having to walk right through them. Because imagine they're just like lying in the middle of the road here. And I'll have to try and navigate it. And that's the risks we take. It's always madness. Not only wildlife, but also livestock like that. And the local farmer, this will be excellent grazing lands for them. But it is a rarer thing to see, like herds of cows up in the High Glen. Anyway, I'll update you once we're further along here. See, another thing with livestock and animals that I've noticed over the years, if you're wearing a colour like this with the green or like a camo colour, the animals often come closer in if it's like wildlife. Or sometimes sheep and cows and stuff give you no bother, whereas if you're wearing like a mad like red, bright red colours or whatever else, bright blues, often they come over and take an interest. But maybe that's because they're used to seeing farmers wearing kind of countryside get up like this as well. Often I wear coats like this, not only for that factor where you get closer to the nature, but more also because it's hard wearing and the storms I get caught in. These jackets keep me dry, and then the fabric of the jacket, it dries off so quick just with the wind. I can be in multiple rainstorms sometimes on like one adventure, and it's just the perfect gear. Look at this, there's a wee bridge here. It's a metal bridge. It's a Bailey bridge, which used to be the type of bridge you could buy. It was kind of like a prefabricated structure. You would join, well, you would fabricate it on this, build it together on the site with these prefabricated sections, and each one was obviously bigger or smaller depending on what they needed. But I've actually documented a massive Bailey bridge before at the Craighall Gorge in the lands of what I think is Perthshire. See, in this glen, folks, there's beetles the size of mice. And look, it's blue. There's a, well, purple. There's a purple beetle right there. And literally I see mice kicking about that are no bigger than that. Check it out, folks. Like I was saying, I see mice kicking about. And look, there's one right there. There's a dead mouse right there on the path. And that's probably been dropped for like a bird of prey. But literally that beetle, like, they're so big back there. It's crazy. I was just saying that I see mice like that's that size, and then I take 2 steps after putting the camera off and boom, there's a mouse right at my feet. And that is incredible. There's loads of rodents live within landscapes like this, and that's why it's such a perfect land for birds of prey like the kites and the buzzards. The red kite is actually becoming more and more common over the years. You used to hardly see any when I was little, and then nowadays they're really flourishing. But up in these higher glens, you often see the red kite more and then less of the buzzard. Whereas years ago, a buzzard was a more common bird of prey. But I'm sure when I was up Glen Clova a few weeks ago, on the way home from my hill fort adventure last week, I'm sure I saw a golden eagle flying in those lands of the Cairngorms National Park. And I believe this land we're in today is also Cairngorms National Park. It's just insane, like the sort of places we end up. Literally, I've walked so far from my car at this point. Like, if I hadn't noticed this wee cottage up ahead, I might have not have kept on walking. But I love documenting lands like this, folks. It's just so vast and breathtaking. I can see little waterfalls coming off some of the rocks and stuff in the far distance. And these hills in front of me are so big. Those are the hills that we could see absolutely ages ago when I was miles down the glen. And we've just slowly weaved our way up. So I'm not sure if this ancient cottage up here is abandoned, or it could be like a private estate house, like we saw with the house lower down the glen. It could be used for shooters or whatever out in these lands. Or it might even be, I'm not sure, like, you get bothies out in these lands, which is like places walkers and stuff can take refuge if they're miles out on the hill. But I think most likely with this cottage here, it's probably to do with the shooting or whatever in the local area. So look at that for a scene of Scotland right there, folks. That little cottage, and it actually looks like it's been freshly renovated. So I'm guessing obviously some of the cottages we see on the channel, they're way like out in abandoned places, like so far from anywhere. That's why they're abandoned, with like no electricity and things. So it's good to see like this one freshly restored and actually in really good condition. I love to see little historical buildings like that coming back to life, and it gives you an essence of how they may have looked at a certain time. Sometimes originally these houses would have had actual roofs made out of like straw or heather and stuff like that, and then later years they actually had stone slab roofs put on them. And then most recent times in Scotland it's the slate roofs, which has been on the go since probably like the 1800s and such like times. But I love to see that wee cottage right there. It's another postcard seen on today's video, and you can see maybe originally it's been a wee kind of bothy house with a surrounding wall, maybe like a little individual shepherd's bothy from an ancient time. Because back in Scottish history, a lot of these lands were taken from the original people and then cleared. Sometimes acres of forests and wild scrub were actually cleared and burned, so they could make way for massive amounts of grazing lands. And sometimes little historical wonders pop up from all different times in history in these lands, and I love trying to uncover what I'm seeing. Look at that, it's so cool that I've walked past the hill. Look at that. It does have the look of the wee shooter's bothy or the gamekeeper's bothy. I'm thinking, I've got that exploring spirit, folks. You know how I am on adventures. I was saying I've walked far enough, but now I'm literally thinking I'm going to punch up that track there. I'm not going to go up this high track that goes that way. I'm wanting to see if I can go around, because I can see massive cliffs in the distance. So I'm thinking I'll go around into that next valley. I'm literally so far from my car. These high hills in the distance, I need to get over behind them. And then further than that even, I'm so far on foot, it's just crazy. But I've got that exploring spirit about me, and I'm wanting to see what's around the corner here on today's adventure. These lands are so remote that this is the closest thing to a main road for miles around. Even the cottage now is way in the distance down there. We've walked so far. That's the main track. It looks like it leads up that way through those hills, and there could be other stuff up that way. But I was thinking today I'm wanting to go this way and look into this lower valley. This is the far hills here that I was wanting to get to on today's adventure, and we're nearly there. There's nothing more raw and real than getting out into an area like this with boots on the ground. You could fly a drone over it or whatever, but when you're actually walking up and down these hills, seeing the land at ground level, it's just so special. I haven't used my drone actually for a few weeks, and it's just really been because of the weather. It's been so windy and rainy. I should have maybe had it today, but I was thinking it was going to be stormy. But so far I've been lucky. I've got a long way to punch back, and that's why I'm not going to hang about up in this high glen too long. There's been so many extreme storms, and honestly, like, it can be trouble if you're this far away on foot, like. So a lot of these areas, they look like mad long grasslands going for miles, but see when you get up close, there's actually areas like this, and that's how I'm saying you can disappear, because there's just boglands. And when you see the boggy grass all over this hill, as far as the eye can see, there's literally just water pouring down off this land, especially with the wet conditions we've had recently. But sometimes when you just stop and take a second in these lands, that's the thing that you hear, running water, and it's coming off and down in an area that looks like there's no running water. It's interesting in this glen as well, you see the lines in the heather striping the land the whole way down this hill, and I'm not sure if that was at the ancient times of them clearing this hill from its natural vegetation, because that isn't really how it looks. It could have even been from a more modern forest that used to grow here. That's potentially what it's been. But from burning heather, that's not normally how it would look. And that's why it makes me question it when I see it. The whole hill's just stripy. But then it could be from a more modern tree plantation that was there. It's maybe just been cut down maybe 10 or 15 years ago, scarring the hill like that. So look at this, and for a spot that we found in today's video, there's some really deep pools here at the side, and the river comes down like a waterfall from the high glen and the cliffs, and then we've kind of made it up to these higher back hills that I could see from such a distance. And this is a cool point to come to on today's video. I don't think there's any point in punching further up here because it's just this mad wasteland that you can see. I love the natural beauty of the land, and some glens, the wee cottages and little houses are abandoned and forgotten, but it appears with this glen they're obviously cared for and maintained. And I do like to see that as well. Again, it's not just obviously abandoned things we document in this channel. Some days it's an adventure into a place like this. And I'm guessing this must be like the River Prosen or whatever, if there's such a thing, coming down through this glen, surely. Yeah, I could probably actually get across there, no problem, but I can feel the water cooling my boots, and in the last few weeks the land in Scotland has gotten so much colder, like, so the water's obviously mimicking that. During the day in Scotland now, it's often been like 12 degrees or 11 degrees, whereas a few weeks ago it was like 18 degrees or 20, and it's really got that autumn feel to it. And I've just loved today's adventure, coming in, seeing what we've seen, and I'll obviously have a look again at that wee bothy and stuff when we go back down. But what madness this is! It's a paradise waterfall carving its way down through the lands of Prosen, and I think if you keep on going up these paths, you obviously end up connecting with different glens, further glens up in the hill, and probably a waterfall like this will get really ferocious at the time of a storm. Today it just looks beautiful and idyllic, but other times it's a madness. Another thing I was noticing on this far cliffs, there's actually a waterfall drops down, but there's no path up to it. And then it leads down and joins this burn down here. But yeah, it's actually quite a deep crossing here. I've not seen any gamekeepers with their Land Rovers or trucks yet, like, but maybe I'll have to thumb a lift, get a lift back down the glen because I've come so far. If my legs give up, I'll have to find a place here to wild camp. It would probably be refreshing, even though the water's cold. Once you were actually in the water in a dip, it would be a bit of fun, it would be really refreshing. But maybe I'm just feeling that way because I've walked so far. The temperatures aren't too bad today. When I was doing a lot of the uphill section early on, I had to unzip the coat to let the breeze in, but I've been walking for a while now and it's just been perfect temperature. The hills here are so cool. If it wasn't so overgrown at this time of year, I would love just to go diagonally over there. In the winter, sometimes when it's frozen and stuff, that's the best time to explore boglands because the ground is proper solid underfoot. And that was how me and Highlander actually got to the Balnamoon Cave last year up Glenesk. Some of the bits we walked through at this time of year, you wouldn't be able to go that way. Anyway, I'll update you when I see the next epic part of this adventure. This is obviously the furthest point in the land we're coming. I can see madnesses with like stones, and it's just so crazy to look at. I've always got that exploring spirit where I want to just keep on going further and further, but then you really do need to have a sensible head as well, considering how far I've come up here. If I had the mountain bike, I could have gone so much further in less time. Also, it's starting to get darker now, earlier in the evenings in Scotland. There's a big difference in Scotland with, like, obviously winter and summer daylight times. In Scotland, it's sunlight in the summer until like 11:30, often just about midnight there's still a bit of light in the sky, whereas in the winter it gets dark sometimes like 3 PM in the afternoon. By 2:30 it's starting to get a wee bit dark. That's a cool thing with Scotland in a lot of ways. It's the seasons that kind of make the landscape as well. That's the reason that it isn't overgrown all year round, and it gives us an opportunity in the winter to go further and to punch into lands that we've never been. Just now I'm kind of going up paths like this, trying to see if there's anything a wee bit further, and then even if there's something we can't get to just now, we'll come back to it for sure, because this channel's all about that, adventure after adventure. So on my videos here, folks, we'll learn the plants and the flowers of Scotland here as we explore, and same with the animals. I'll tell you what they are that we see so we can learn together. And we'll have seen bell heather before and common heather before on the channel, but here's an interesting new one here. It's called a mixed leaf heath, folks, and you see the difference. This is it here with that pink flower and then the different leaves. So that's 3 different types of heather. You get the mixed leaf heath, the bell heather and the common heather, and it's cool to see the 3 of them. I was waiting until I could see the 3 of them in one area to really give you that idea on the channel, and it's cool to do that and not document the nature and wildlife in these places, as well as the history and the little houses and things which create such a beautiful scene. There it is again, folks. You would think that was bell heather when you see the flower, but that's another example of the mixed leaf heath right there. And those are also purple flowers you get on those. So look at that, folks, for a beautiful scene of Scotland. I just love it, the wee house. The only thing that would make it more perfect is to see the smoke coming out the chimney, and maybe somebody coming out the front door offering a cup of tea. That would be the most British thing to see up here in these glens. And I bet back in the day when it was the original herders, they would have had the wee stove on, probably with a pot of tea on the stove. Probably if they were herding through these lands, they'd be going all over Scotland at that time, and little places like this would have been refuge. Or if it hadn't been a shepherd's hut or bothy back in the day, it may have been an old gamekeeper's hut or whatever, if there were deer stalking. But I think the fact that it's got these little walls here, that would make me think that it had definitely been related to livestock and sheep. There's not even an obvious road there. It looks like the road goes into that bog and then up to that gate, which is pretty much also a bog. Yeah, it looks hardly used. That's why I was thinking it's most likely the shooters or whatever that's in it. This will be incredibly tick infested lands here. I was just wanting to have a wee look over. Yeah, there's no real easy way to get to it, and I can see it is like locked up on the windows. But yeah, what a madness, folks. It's another wee corner of Scotland documented on today's videos, and I love to see it. Lands of Glen Prosen that we've never seen, and it's the farthest lands you can get. There is little tracks keep on going, but they get narrower and narrower and even more rough. And it kind of reminds me of that time we went away up the back of Glen Island up to the Tulchan. But the difference up at the Tulchan and that was that the croft we found there in the cottage was still empty and abandoned, and that gives you an idea today of how that may have looked originally. Like that would have been the same as the way that the house in the other glen looked, if that even makes sense. I would love to have a wee place like that for weekend getaways. You could camp there at night and have a cool little spot if it was stormy over like certain weekends. But another amazing thing, you could go exploring on such cool adventures. The trouble is, when you're on foot from like the car park, by the time you get up here, you're so gassed out, and it's harder to even walk further into these lands, depending on the situation obviously. Today, like on the forecast, it's meant to get stormy later on. That's how I set off early, but I've already been walking probably for a couple of hours up this track, so I'm not wanting to get stuck out here in the back and beyond. Maybe next time I'll have to bring the mountain bike, but then maybe if I was on the bike, the cows would have chased me. I still have to navigate back down past the cows. Here's a historical update to do with that little bothy cottage, and it kind of signifies it was definitely for like a shepherd, because there's another wall line here, like a little enclosure, and that's the third one that we saw. Basically every little level piece of ground here, they've kind of walled it off. So there's another cool little historical nugget. It's typical in Scotland, whenever I go to switch off the camera, like, I just see more and more. I would go over and document these things directly, but literally, like, the ground, if I went down there, it's like head height bushes. Even though it looks just now like it's quite short grass, once you're standing down there, you're in water now, and it's just crazy, crazy adventures. So here's my boring geological fact about the glaciation period which shaped and carved these lands of Scotland. If you actually look at the side of the hill, it's actually got steps, and you can see it's worn like steps the whole way down there. But then the interesting thing, if you look at the other side of the far hill, there's also the same steps at the same height of the hill, and that's actually because when the glacier or whatever was coming down here, that shows that it's been flowing for a vast long amount of time at a different height, and it's like it's been getting lower and then lower and lower, and each time it was getting lower it was carving that lower step into the land. And it's cool to see that with the land itself. That's the kind of thing that the land tells you the history if you just look at it in the proper way. And the fact that it's the same at both sides, it really gives you that clear picture of the old ice flows that used to come down glens like this. Guess what, folks? We're now in the land of the cow, and we've kind of made it probably like a mile or more since the last clip. The cows are at the side of the path here, and I can see a lot of them's lying down, and some of the other ones have actually pushed further up the hill. So I'm just hoping that they stay up the hill there. Looks like the little white cafe and stuff are actually lying down having a sleep. Oh yeah, that's the young cafe. Hello. Hello there, young cafe. What a cool beast. Look, what an amazing cow. I'm not going to upset all the cafes because they're just chilling there, chewing their cud. You can see them, the older cows is obviously higher on the hills. They're the defenders. And then the young ones are more inquisitive. They would probably come in a bit just to see what you were up to, whereas the biggies, they'd probably walk the other way if they had the choice. So cool to see them though, good healthy cows, and what better place for them than this beautiful land, eating the last of the summer green grass before it turns to that yellow brown autumn colour out here in the lands. And yeah, I've been lucky with these cows because they've been proper chill. You can't trust the cows all the time on adventures, and sometimes if I can avoid it I'll go around them, or I'll avoid a piece of land that the cows are in. Yes, we've made it further down to this wee bridge. Last time I came over here I wasn't sure if I was in a chase situation or no. The little birds as well are just flying around, landing on the track, like right in front of me there. It's dancing about on the track. It'd be good if I could zoom in and actually show you how close nature gets to you in places like this. Look at this bridge. The water's got that brown shade to it because of the peat. Lands like this, there's a lot of that brown tint comes out when the rain comes. The peat has got that brown colour to it. I say it a lot in my videos because I get people commenting often saying, why is the river that colour, the brown colour? But that's the reason, it looks like Guinness or Coca-Cola. So what BKR video would be complete without a bit of abandoned history that we've never seen before. And look at this, here's an old wall outline here from something back in the day. You can see it, it's like a clear rectangle here in the land. And I was actually looking at the stones further up thinking, oh, it's like there's been old walls. So this is a cool wee nugget to actually add to the video. This is from such an ancient time, and you can tell by how far gone it is. The landscape's pretty much covered it up. But maybe there had been other like ancient settlements or tracks over here from so long ago that obviously if there's wooden huts and such like, they just go missing from the land. These trees that we can see down in the hollow are actually where that beautiful farmhouse stands in the land. So we are getting further down the track. I've literally walked so far, and today I wore the wellies. And the reason I put wellies on was because of the ticks. It wasn't actually for the muddy or dirty environment. But sometimes if you're walking through grass to document ancient wonders, you end up getting the ticks on you. But the wellies kind of prevent that to a certain degree. So that's kind of how I wore them. But in hindsight, I would have been comfortable enough probably with the trainers or maybe the boots on. And wow, yeah, it's amazing. Look how far those hills are now. You can see the haze of the atmosphere between us and them. It's a good few miles, I would say, I've walked today, and I've still got a few to go. So judging from the lie of the land here, oh my goodness, look, I just stood in that as I opened the clip there, folks. But yeah, judging from the lie of the land, it's like there's been an old track there going into that farmhouse. And I was just thinking in my mind there as I was walking, they might have had a water wheel, and I was wondering if they maybe had a water source or a wee dam dug down in to the hill somewhere. because I can see ditches and stuff leading down that way. It's interesting to theorise, like, depends what the farm was doing though. If it was just using, like, doing livestock and stuff like that, they wouldn't have necessarily had a water wheel. If they hadn't been doing grain or wheat or whatever like that. Who even knows the proper history? I'm not really wanting to go poking about because it looks like a well kept property. We had recent, like, extreme amounts of rain, and that's why the ground is so flooded and wet. But a lot of these places were built in, like, natural boglands, when these farmhouses and places were originally built. In this glen as well, there's actually underground cables, and you can see the evidence of this here, and that shows that even that bothy up in the high glen may have had electricity to it. Yeah, the character of that, it's a house in paradise. That's my ultimate house right there, folks. Out in a land like this, with its own little forest next to it. If you had a wee croft here with a forest, you could have that income as well from the timber. Like, once a generation or whatever, you could fell the timber, and then you could also have the income for, like, the livestock and stuff every year, and then maybe the little bit of crops. Who would have known how it was back in the old days? Like, it's so cool to see the old stone buildings though, with the more modern white construction with the render at the front. Probably originally it all looked like that dark stone, but it looks like it's got good windows and it's well kept. It's just a beautiful property. Whoa, a butterfly just went fleeing over my head, and that's rare because it's quite cool today in the air. And yeah, this is just still a vast landscape. I've got to punch on further down out of this madness. I've been so far, like, as far as the eye can see. Like I've already said on the video, it's just such a distance, and now and again I throw the camera on and update the viewers. So check it out, folks, I'm back down on the tarmac on the main road, and what an adventure it's been. We've documented a piece of land up here that we had never seen before, and it was a wee adventure seeing those buildings and things, the old historical construction of those houses up on the hill. Such a wild, vast landscape, and we obviously went so far, as far as I could walk today pretty much, because I'm telling you, like, I can feel it in my legs. I don't think I could have gone much further, but probably if I had comfier footwear on instead of the wellies, I'd be able to punch a lot further up there. But yeah, I love the character of this wee lane, and look at the way the moss and stuff clings onto the dike. That's what gives the character of Scotland. And the whole road here at Glen Prosen, pretty much on the way up, is just like this. It weaves its way through landscapes like this. The lower down the glen, there's less of the wild heather hill, and it's more agricultural green fields and stuff like that. And yeah, it's just been cool though. Today, what we've seen, I've absolutely loved, and I've been meaning to go up that road for a while, and I saw it ages ago when I was on another adventure. I could see that road leading up there, and I was always curious to see what was up there. And it was obviously like that wee cottage bothy. It looks fully restored and it's in brand new condition. When I saw it in a distance, I thought, I wonder if it's like a wee abandoned croft or whatever. And that's why I like walking so far. There's just stuff in Scotland round every corner. But look, the wee Kia is the only car down here in the car park. And there is actually a toilet facility there, I think, if anybody's out for a walk or whatever. I'm not sure, I've not even seen if it's open, but I'm guessing it is. And I love the sound of the water flowing down past this little bridge. The river's been pretty close to the path today that I've walked. This is the same river, obviously, that I was standing in, way up at the high glen, miles away up, further than the eye could see when you first turn the corner at the top of this hill. It's been another fun adventure. I don't even know what to say, I'm knackered. That's how far I've gone. It's cool to see the nature and wildlife as well as the buildings and the landscape. Anyway, I'm going to end this one here, folks. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon with the next adventure, wherever I end up going.